Natalie Brooks didn't move. I remember thinking, she's not just sitting still, she's waiting. The paper sat folded on her lap. One red stamp, 2 words, state property. The woman across from her didn't fold. She shouted, pointed, held up documents like weapons. "You're trespassing. I'll have this torn down by noon." Natalie blinked, once. The sun hit her cheek. She didn't flinch. Behind them, a young officer crossed her arms. Didn't step in, just watched. The construction crew waited by the curb, engines running. No one looked at the camera above the porch, but the red light was on, recording everything. Natalie didn't lift her head, not when the yelling got louder, not when the paper in the woman's hand started shaking. She'd seen this before, people with just enough power to feel untouchable, and just enough fear to cover it with rules. Her fingers stayed on the folded sheet, the edge pressed lightly against her leg. Red ink visible, state property. Not loud, just clear. This copy had been in her jacket since the week it passed. 2 folds, 1 purpose. It never needed to be shown, until now. She didn't write that bill to win elections. She wrote it after watching a veteran crawl up 3 steps to see his granddaughter. She wrote it after hearing her mother say, "We'll carry you, if we have to." She remembered every word, every clause, every exemption they tried to sneak in. And now, as Paula kept talking, Natalie wasn't listening. She was tracking, body language, tone, distance, volume, all admissible, all being recorded. The camera under the porch blinked red. She could see its reflection in the window glass. She hadn't spoken because she didn't need to. Not yet. This wasn't passivity. It was process. She stayed quiet because the law didn't require volume, only timing, only proof, and she had both. On her lap, in her coat, and in the blinking eye above them all. The clipboard came out before the shouting, held high, 2 hands, white paper fluttering slightly in the breeze. A performance, not a delivery. Natalie didn't look up. She had already read that paper this morning. It was taped to her front door at 5:42 a.m. She didn't tear it down. She took it off clean, slid it into the kitchen drawer, right next to the stamped receipts. Now it was back, held by the same woman who taped it there, Paula Gentry, president of the HOA, elected by 12 votes, serving like she had 12,000 behind her. "This is a formal violation," Paula called out, louder than she needed to. The neighbors across the street shifted behind their blinds. She took 2 steps closer, dropped her voice just enough to sound reasonable, for the cameras. "For the record, I've given you 3 written notices. No response." She smiled then, not wide, just tight enough to sting, like she thought this was already over. Natalie didn't blink. Her hand stayed flat on the folded page. She wasn't watching Paula. She was watching the bulldozer. The driver looked young, nervous, still waiting for the go-ahead. The engine stayed on. Paula turned slightly, raised her voice again. "This isn't personal. This is HOA protocol." That was the moment, the phrase, not personal. 3 syllables that would play back perfectly on tape, along with the volume, the tone, the framing, all within the camera's line of sight, all admissible. Natalie shifted slightly in her chair. Her elbow brushed the edge of the armrest. The paper stayed put. She didn't speak, didn't argue. Let Paula fill the silence. Dig the hole, because anyone who announces control too early has no idea they're already being documented. Maybe you've seen someone like her, calm on the surface, but holding something sharper than anger. I've been in rooms like that, where staying quiet was the smartest thing I could do. Not weak, just waiting. If this story struck a chord, share what it reminded you of. And if you'd like to follow more stories like this, you're welcome to stay. The camera had been there for months. Natalie installed it herself, not because she feared something might happen, because she knew it eventually would. It blinked once, then again. Each flash a quiet admission. This is now evidence. Paula didn't notice. She was busy pacing the sidewalk like a judge without a bench, pointing at cracks in the concrete, calling them hazards, claiming Natalie's ramp was an eyesore and a structural violation, her voice rising, falling, like she'd rehearsed this in a mirror. Natalie let her talk, Her hands rested still, but her mind was moving. Back to last July, the final hearing. The bill she'd co-authored, Oregon State ADA Compliance Act, 2023, passed with full support, signed by her own hand. In that bill was a single clause, small, quiet, buried on page 17. State-approved modifications on private residences are exempt from HOA override. She remembered fighting to keep that line. Now it was the fuse. Paula stepped closer again. "This is private property," she snapped. "You're making the whole street look bad." That was the line. Natalie's fingers pressed the paper gently, just enough to reveal the red header. Oregon State ADA Compliance, 2023. A single breath, no words. Behind her, the porch camera caught it, the ramp, the angle, the face of a woman shouting the wrong law at the wrong person. Natalie didn't speak, didn't move, but her eyes shifted, just once, toward the bulldozer. The driver saw the paper. His hands left the ignition, slowly. For a second, he looked at Natalie, then away. He wasn't going to start it, not yet, because even he could tell. This wasn't a zoning issue. This was state law, and someone was about to step over it. The camera had been there for months. Natalie installed it herself, not because she feared something might happen, because she knew it eventually would. It blinked once, then again. Each flash a quiet admission. This is now evidence? Paula didn't notice. She was busy pacing the sidewalk like a judge without a bench, pointing at cracks in the concrete, calling them hazards, claiming Natalie's ramp was an eyesore and a structural violation. Her voice rising, falling, like she'd rehearsed this in a mirror. Natalie let her talk. Her hands rested still, but her mind was moving. Back to last July, the final hearing. The bill she'd co-authored, Oregon State ADA Compliance Act, 2023, passed with full support, signed by her own hand. In that bill was a single clause, small, quiet, buried on page 17. State-approved modifications on private residences are exempt from HOA override. She remembered fighting to keep that line. Now it was the fuse. Paula stepped closer again. "This is private property," she snapped. "You're making the whole street look bad." That was the line. Natalie's fingers pressed the paper gently, just enough to reveal the red header. Oregon State ADA Compliance, 2023. A single breath. No words. Behind her, the porch camera caught it, the ramp, the angle, the face of a woman shouting the wrong law at the wrong person. Natalie didn't speak, didn't move, but her eyes shifted just once toward the bulldozer. The driver saw the paper. His hands left the ignition, slowly. For a second, he looked at Natalie, then away. He wasn't going to start it, not yet, because even he could tell. This wasn't a zoning issue. This was state law, and someone was about to step over it. The order came at 9 o'clock sharp. A man in a neon vest stepped out of a white HOA pickup. He didn't knock, just measured the ramp, scribbled something down, then taped a notice to the railing. Violation. Structure removal order. Immediate action required. Neighbors stood on porches. Phones were already filming. A few heads turned to Natalie. She didn't move, didn't blink. Across the street, Paula stood with two other HOA board members, hands on hips, grinning like it was over. "See?" she shouted, loud enough for the camera to hear. "We've followed procedure. It's done." Natalie reached into her coat pocket, slow, precise, pulled out a single document, folded once. Red seal, wet signature, Oregon State Housing Department, ADA Bill 217 authorization, dated last fall, signed by Governor Natalie Brooks. Gasps didn't come from Natalie, they came from behind her. "We were told this wasn't state property," someone muttered from the HOA group. A younger man stepped forward. "Turns out, it is." Then came the shift, the officer. She stepped forward from the edge of frame. Her hand hovered near her badge, not to pull it, just to make it known. Eyes locked on the man who posted the notice. "You just trespassed on federal installation," she said. Calm, clear, recorded. The man backed up. Paula froze. And then, from above, a voice. A woman on the second floor balcony. Old, quiet. She was the one who gave my grandson the ramp after his surgery. A pause, small, but everything changed. The boy on the scooter came back, stopped near the sign, pointed to it, looked up at Paula. "Why did you lie to us?" He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He just asked, and every camera caught it. The blinking red light above the porch flared again. The officer tapped her phone, time-stamped the moment. That's when the silence broke, not with yelling, but with weight, the kind that buries. Natalie didn't speak. She stood alone now, no crowd, no shouting. The porch light flickered once, then stayed on. She turned, lifted the folded paper from the chair, slid it back into the wooden plaque beside the door, the one her mother had carved into, decades ago. The groove fitted perfectly, still there. One corner of the paper was torn, slight, still visible. She left it that way. The ramp creaked faintly as she moved. A single wheel rolled forward, then locked. On the lawn, the old notice, the first threat, the one Paula hand-delivered, drifted in the breeze. It landed upside down. No one picked it up. The officer had walked off. The truck was gone. Even the boy with the question had vanished around the bend. A ginger cat stepped across the grass, paws soft, tail flicking. It passed the paper without pause, stopped near Natalie, looked up. She didn't reach down, but the cat didn't leave. She sat back slowly, folding her hands. Her gaze drifted to the railing, the part her father had patched just after his second surgery. The wood still held the burn mark, a crooked slash, a mark only she ever noticed. He said it wasn't meant to last. She made sure it did. A nail lay near her foot, rusty, bent. From the day they threatened to remove the ramp, she picked it up, held it, then set it gently on the rail. And that was that. The sun dipped, her shadow stretched across the cement. Long, calm, anchored. She didn't win. She just didn't move. Not everyone fights to win. Some just want no one to touch what they kept alive for too long. Some victories don't echo. They settle. Like a nail, rusted but still there. Like paper, folded, worn, never thrown away. Natalie didn't explain, didn't prove. She just kept. The porch still faces west. The ramp still leans steady against the steps. Nothing new, but nothing removed. Neighbors won't speak of that day, but they'll glance longer at the camera, at the wooden plaque, at the woman who didn't move, but made others shift. Justice didn't wear a badge. It wore quiet. It wore memory. It wore her father's burn mark in the railing. There's a kind of strength that refuses the noise, that waits, gathers, holds. Some people learn it with age. Some inherit it in silence. Because not everything broken is meant to be replaced. Some things are meant to be seen, to be kept, to remind. There are houses that stand not for comfort, but for proof. There are people who do not shout, because they already know. And there are moments that never make the news, but still settle the balance. Not everything must be fought for. Some things only need someone who stays,